These scribblings on various post-it notes were presented to the jury as confession evidence against Lucy Letby in her trial. And of course, now she's serving 15 whole life terms for those offences. But what I find extremely strange and somewhat concerning to say the least is that it was not mentioned in court that these notes were made on advice from a counsellor between the time that she was removed from the ward and arrested by the police for these offences, during which time she was said to be distressed and anxious, and she was told not to discuss the matter with colleagues or anybody else. And so the counsellor told her to write down her thoughts and feelings on these notes as some form of therapy. And so she was writing these notes to put down her thoughts and feelings. Whether or not they were true is obviously up for debate. But either way, she was told to make these notes by her counsellor. Now, there's been a lot of emphasis placed on certain parts of these notes and perhaps not much emphasis placed on others, which I'll come to in this video, because lots of people have raised concern about this. Before I go too much further, I do want to say that this video is in no way intended to mean any discourtesy or any disrespect to anybody involved in the trial, whether directly involved with the trial, a lawyer, a witness, a doctor, an expert, etc. I just wanted to say that at the outset. However, there have been a group of experts raise concerns, both penning a letter to the government asking to postpone or alter the public inquiry, and prominent lawyers. Notably, yesterday I saw from Rob Rinder, Barrister Rob Rinder, many of you may know better as Judge Rinder, saying that he says, "I'm an expert in complex criminal cases, and for the information now in the public domain, there appears to be a great deal to be concerned about in this case." Speaking about the Lucy Letby case, of course. The letter that I referred to, they wrote asking the government to either postpone or alter the public inquiry because, just for clarity, the public inquiry is not going to look at the verdicts themselves or any damages in respect of civil claims. It's just looking at everything else to do with what happened, but not the convictions themselves. The letter says that 24 neonatal experts wrote to say that the natural assumption that she was a murderer meant that alternative, potentially complex causes for those deaths were not examined and important lessons were missed. It also said that there were concerns over the way statistics and the science around newborn babies were presented to the jury at the first trial, and that one area of concern was that a chart shown to the jury showed that she was there for all the murders and attempted murders. However, it's since been claimed that there were other deaths on the unit during the same period when she was not present. And so all of these things now call into question whether or not this is a safe conviction. And as I said, no disrespect intended to anybody. But just for some context about these notes as well, there's another helpful post here which has a screenshot of messages. And it says here, an exchange between Lucy Letby and another doctor. And it says, Lucy Letby texted to say, sat having a quiet moment and want to cry. The doctor said, poor little thing, and are you okay? Have a cry, you'll feel better. To which she then responded, we lost 2 babies I was caring for, and this happened today. And then the bit that's somewhat highlighted, you can probably just about see at the bottom, says, makes you think I am missing something or good enough, seemingly to question whether or not she's good enough at her job. And now this, obviously, there's various bits on this that I'm going to come to. Now, just to explain very briefly, this was presented as confession evidence. Now, all that means is any statement that is adverse to the maker of the statement is a confession of sorts. It doesn't have to be an outright statement that you committed the crime. It's just anything really that is adverse to the maker of the statement is a type of confession evidence. However, this note obviously went a little bit further than that because not the bit that's highlighted. I'll come back to that in a moment. The bits that were presented as confession evidence include these. It says, I don't deserve to live. I killed them on purpose. Here it says, I did this. And again, at the bottom, it says, I am evil. I did this. So presented to the jury throughout the trial as confession evidence that she's admitted to these crimes, along with other bits. Obviously, you can see the word hate here, hate myself. So very negative in tone, this whole note. But these, I read, were presented to the jury throughout the trial as confession evidence. Now, I also have to say that some people have inquired about getting full transcripts of the trial. However, Manchester Crown Court has responded to say that the transcripts for the trial would be substantial and estimated in the sum of £100,000. So if anybody wanted to get the full transcripts of the trial to go through it word by word, it would cost. And so, for example, if a charity were to look into this, for example, the full transcripts would run over £100,000, according to that note from the Manchester Crown Court there. Now, coming back to this note, now in the context that this was written after counselling sessions to write down all of her feelings during that time that she's said to be extremely distressed, if we read in full that passage which has been presented as confession evidence, it reads as follows. Now, this is not to say that it's a definitive alternative, it's just to make you think about it. I don't deserve to live. I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them. And then when read in conjunction with other things on here, it says here, not good enough. Here it says, I can't breathe. I can't focus every day. For that overwhelming fear, I'll panic. But it also says here, I haven't done anything wrong. Slander, discrimination, victimization. So all getting too much, everything, hate myself. So these are obviously messages full of self-hate. Now, she did have comments about these during her police interview. She says here, I wrote it because everything had got on top of me. Again, bearing in mind the context that was not presented at court, that these were written as part of counselling or on advice of counselling. She said she wrote it because everything had got on top of me. It was when I'd not long found out I'd been removed from the unit and they were telling me my practice might be wrong, that I needed to read out all my competencies. My practice might not have been good enough. She says, so I felt like people were blaming my practice, that I might have hurt them without knowing through my practice. And that made me feel guilty, and I just felt really isolated, she says. She goes on, I was blaming myself, but not because I'd done something, but because of the way people were making me feel. But like I'd only ever done my best for those babies, and then people were trying to say that my practice wasn't good, that I'd done something. I just couldn't cope, and I just did not want to be here anymore. I just felt it was all just spiraling out of control. I just didn't know how to feel about it, or what was going to happen, or what to do. The detective said, what people were they? She responds, the trust and the staff on the unit. Did you ever make any mistakes? The detective asked. She replied, no. And so in this video, I'm not definitively saying that these convictions were wrong, and nor will I pretend to know every word that was said to the jury about these notes and so on. Of course, I wasn't there and I haven't read it. As you've just seen, the full transcript would be over £100,000, even if you just wanted to read the transcript yourself. But the very concept of a reasonable doubt, if it is the case that it was not fully and properly presented to the jury, that these notes were written as part of counselling and she was advised to write down her most inner, deepest, darkest thoughts, whether they were true or not, whatever she thought, just to put it down on paper. You've probably come across that before, where people are just told to write things out because it's therapeutic. It helps you to get things literally, to get things off your mind. Sometimes I've suggested to clients that have been really upset about something, write a letter to the person you're upset with, because by the time you finish writing the letter, you're probably not upset anymore. Or you've probably convinced yourself that these issues are resolvable. Or you've just put things down to get them off your mind and it makes you feel better, but without actually sending the letter. Whereas here, I'm no counsellor myself, I don't profess to be, but I understand that counsellors do often say to write down your thoughts and feelings and just random thoughts to get them off your mind. And if this was part of a counselling exercise and she's written these things down and she was feeling inadequate, she was not feeling good enough, that is perhaps or could have been a reasonable doubt had the jury known the full context of the way those notes came about. If instead, and I understand that they were experts instructed, yet not called to give evidence, and whilst the defence argued during the trial that the notes represented her anguished state of mind when she was accused, it was not guilt, it was anguish, not guilt, a young woman who was trained hard to be a nurse, loved what she did, found she was being blamed for the deaths of the babies that she cared for. This was argued by the defence counsel, but no expert forensic psychologists were called to give evidence on how to interpret the notes. Now, that could be because it was believed by the defence team that an expert called would not give positive evidence on Lucy Letby's behalf. It could have been an oversight. Now, I'm not going to criticise counsel because I wasn't there and I didn't make the decisions. And neither am I an expert criminal practitioner. But in the words of Rob Rinder, he says, "I am an expert in complex criminal cases, and from the information now in the public domain, there appears to be a great deal to be concerned about in this case." So I just put it to you, as the saying goes, that there may well be more to think about here. But bearing in mind that the public inquiry is not looking into the verdicts, and the only available avenue now would be the Criminal Cases Review Commission. So, as I say, now that this information has been made public, it has left a lot of people raising concerns and criticisms about the safety of these convictions. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I reiterate, this video is in no way intended to cause any discourtesy to anybody involved in the trial. And so for now, I look forward to reading your comments in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.